Hey, I'm Meg. Welcome to our channel. Now relax and let me tell you a story. Carla Hayes woke up with the same heavy feeling that had been stalking her for months. Her head was throbbing, a metallic taste filled her mouth, and her hands trembled so much she almost let the coffee cup slip from her fingers. In the mirror, a pale 42-year-old woman with deep dark circles and sunken cheekbones stared back at her. "Again? Are you feeling sick?" asked Edward, entering the kitchen with a concerned expression. Her husband looked fresh, well-rested, despite having said he'd worked late the night before. Or at least, that's what he said, Carla thought. "It's probably just exhaustion," she replied, trying to hide the suspicions that were piling up in her mind. "This last quarter was especially grueling." "I know." He gave her an understanding look, pouring himself coffee from the same pot. Carla watched his every move intently. If he was putting something in her food or drink, he did it with impressive skill. In 15 years of marriage, she had never seen him so attentive. Before, he barely noticed when she was feeling unwell. "Maybe you should see a doctor," Edward suggested, sitting down across from her. "I worry about you, Carla." "You worry? Of course you do." "You want me to be gone soon, don't you?" she thought, but out loud, she only said, "Yes, maybe I should. I'll make an appointment this week." Edward took his phone out of his pocket and began to type something. Out of the corner of her eye, Carla saw the name Lorena appear on the screen, and her heart tightened. Lorena Vega, 27 years old, a brunette with golden skin, worked as a graphic designer at their advertising agency. A delicate face. A model's body. 6 months earlier, Carla had caught them kissing in the agency's parking garage. She had chosen to remain silent, hoping it was just a passing fling. But the symptoms had started right after that episode. In the beginning, Carla would wake up with nausea and dizziness just once a week. Then, the episodes became more frequent. In the last month, a day hardly went by when she didn't feel some discomfort. "Honey, I forgot to tell you," Edward said, putting down his phone. "Mr. Mendez, our lawyer, called yesterday. He talked about the will, said it would be good to update some clauses because of changes in legislation." The will. Carla had drafted the document 3 years earlier when she expanded the business and took on large loans. If something were to happen to her, all her assets would be transferred to her husband. The lake house, 2 cars, company stock, bank accounts. In total, something around $2 million. "What kind of changes?" she asked cautiously. "Mendez will explain it better tomorrow. He wants us to go to his office in the afternoon." Carla nodded, but a shiver ran down her spine. There were too many coincidences. The illness, her husband's sudden attention, the interest in the will, and she had noticed other changes. Edward was now staying at the office much later. He showed up with new cologne, expensive shirts, typical signs of an affair, but perhaps in this case, the problem was much more serious. After breakfast, Edward left for work and Carla remained at home. She managed her own online boutique of luxury cosmetics and could work remotely. But that morning, instead of fulfilling orders, she sat down at her computer and searched. Symptoms of gradual poisoning, nausea, dizziness, weakness, weight loss, metallic taste in the mouth. Everything matched, especially if the poison was being administered in small, daily doses. This type of poisoning was difficult to detect, usually confused with stress or a virus. She stood up and walked through the house, examining everything with a critical eye. If her suspicions were correct, the poison could be hidden somewhere. In the spices, her vitamins, her moisturizing lotion. The possibilities were many. She returned to the computer and ordered several hidden cameras. If Edward was putting something in her food, she would find out. Until then, she had to act naturally, without raising any suspicion. At noon, her friend Irene called. "Carla, how are you? It's been so long since we've seen each other." "I'm fine, just working a lot," Carla lied. "And how are you?" "Everything's the same, but tell me something. Do you remember Lorena? From your agency, that beautiful brunette?" Carla felt her body stiffen. Lorena Vega. Of course, I remember. Why? I saw her yesterday at the mall in Lincoln Park. She was buying a ridiculously expensive dress. It surprised me. Where would she get the money for that kind of purchase? Her salary isn't that great. It could have been a gift from someone, Carla replied, trying to sound casual. Yeah, it could be, Irene agreed. Well, honey, I have to go. Let's talk this weekend. After she hung up, Carla remained motionless for a long time. An expensive dress, her husband's new shirts. Where was this money coming from? Her boutique generated a stable income, but not enough for excessive luxuries, and Edward received a standard manager's salary. Nothing added up. That evening, her symptoms intensified. Carla could barely prepare dinner and ended up lying on the sofa. Edward arrived around 8 p.m. and, as always, apologized for the delay before sitting next to her. How are you feeling? He asked, stroking her hand. Not very well. I'm dizzy and my head feels like it's going to explode. Tomorrow you're going to the doctor. No excuses. You can't play with your health. Carla just nodded and closed her eyes. Edward went to the kitchen, and a short time later, the sound of boiling water and a spoon clinking in a cup came from there. In a few minutes, he returned with 2 mugs. Drink this, it will help. Tea with honey for your headache, he said, offering her the steaming cup. Carla took a few sips. The tea was absurdly sweet and had a strange taste at the back of her throat. Even so, she finished it all, observing her husband attentively. He was also drinking from his own mug, showing pleasure. Go to bed early, Edward advised. I'm going to work a little more. Carla went to the bedroom, but instead of lying down, she watched the building's front gate from the window. Half an hour later, she saw Edward leave the building and get into his car. Interesting. Where could he be going at 11:30 p.m.? She dressed quickly, took her car, which was in a separate spot in the basement garage, and followed him at a safe distance. He crossed the city and parked in front of a high-end condominium in the South Loop. He went up to the 3rd floor of one of the buildings. A little later, a light came on in one of the windows. The female silhouette was unmistakable, even from a distance. Lorena. Her suspicions were confirmed. Edward was not just cheating, he was maintaining a serious relationship, to the point of renting an apartment for his mistress, most likely with money that came from their family assets. Carla turned around and went back home. In her head, thoughts were spinning non-stop. If Edward had decided to get rid of her for his mistress, a divorce would be disadvantageous. According to their marriage contract, if there was a separation, he would only get the house they lived in. But if she died, the entire fortune would automatically pass to him. At home, Carla went to the medicine cabinet, took the activated charcoal, and swallowed several capsules at once. If there was poison in the tea, the charcoal would help neutralize it. Then she went to the bathroom and induced vomiting. Better safe than sorry. When Edward returned close to 2 a.m., she pretended to be asleep. He lay down beside her carefully and soon began to snore. But Carla remained with her eyes open, her heart racing, planning her next steps. The next morning, she woke up determined to act. The activated charcoal and vomiting had helped. She felt better than she had in recent weeks. This confirmed it. Yesterday's tea was really contaminated. Edward left for work at his usual time, wishing her a good day and reminding her of the visit to the lawyer. Carla smiled with the most innocent expression she could manage, but inside she was boiling. How audacious. To plan his wife's death and, at the same time, play the attentive husband. As soon as the door closed behind him, she rolled up her sleeves. She installed a micro camera in the kitchen, camouflaged among the spice jars, another in the bedroom, and one more in the living room, all with recording and live streaming functions to her phone. Then she examined every corner of the house, looking for possible hiding places for the substance. In the bathroom, she rummaged through tubes and bottles. Some showed signs of having been opened. A jar of hand cream that she used frequently seemed to have been carefully tampered with. In the kitchen, the anomalies were even more evident. The honey jar, the same one used for the tea, was not in its usual place. The vitamin bottle seemed to have been glued shut again. Carla took photos of all the suspicious items, put samples in plastic baggies, and labeled them. The next day, she would take everything to a private laboratory. At noon, Edward called. "Honey, how are you? You didn't forget about the lawyer, did you?" "No, I'm on my way there now. I'll meet him at 2 p.m. "Great. And the doctor, did you schedule it?" "Booked for tomorrow morning," she lied. "You did well. See you tonight." Carla hung up and looked at herself in the bathroom mirror. She needed to look like a sick, innocent woman who suspected nothing. As a precaution, she applied a little dark shadow under her eyes, enhancing the dark circles. Mr. Mendez's office was in a high-end commercial building on Michigan Avenue. The lawyer, a robust, middle-aged man with a well-kept beard, received her with exaggerated courtesy. "Carla, please, have a seat. Edward asked me to update your will." "What exactly needs to be changed?" she asked, sitting down elegantly. "With the new succession laws in effect, it is important to adjust some clauses to ensure that the spouse receives all assets without the need for a lengthy legal process." Carla frowned. It wasn't like that before. There could still be delays. With the changes, everything will be automatic and faster. Faster for Edward to inherit everything, she thought, keeping her face impassive. "Of course," she replied with a soft smile. "Edward is practical. He likes everything by the book." Mendez handed her the documents. Carla read them carefully. Everything seemed legal, but in practice, the new will made Edward the universal heir, with the right to everything immediately. "Sign here, here, and here," the lawyer indicated. She signed, smiling on the outside, but screaming on the inside. Let him think the plan is working. Mendez thanked her, put away the documents, and stood up to accompany her to the exit. Carla, maintaining a serene expression, shook his hand and left the room with firm steps, but her heart was pounding. In the elevator, she took a deep breath. Everything was in motion. The game had begun. As soon as she left the building, Carla stopped for a moment to catch her breath. It was then that, as she approached the coffee shop on the ground floor, she recognized a familiar figure, Lorena Vega. She was on the phone, her back turned, but the tone of her voice was unmistakable. Carla discreetly stepped back, positioning herself behind a column. With slightly trembling hands, she activated the recorder on her phone. "Yes, everything is going according to plan," Lorena was saying. "The will was updated today. Now it's just a matter of waiting a little longer." A pause. "No, she doesn't suspect a thing. Edward said she's even weaker." Another pause. "Yes, I know it's not easy, but we have no other choice." Confirmed. Lorena was not just the mistress. She was a direct accomplice in the murder plot. Carla forced herself to remain calm. She needed to collect as much evidence as possible. She approached discreetly, the phone's recorder still running. "Hasn't she gone to the doctor yet?" Lorena continued. "Great, less risk. I know the dose is small, but Edward prefers to be certain. Okay, see you tonight. We'll sort out the details." Lorena hung up and left the place. Carla waited for her to disappear from sight before emerging from her hiding place. In the car, she listened to the recording. The audio quality was not perfect, but words like plan, dose, doctor, and will were clear enough. The recording alone was not enough, but in conjunction with other evidence, it could become decisive. At home, Carla reviewed the footage from the cameras. For now, nothing suspicious, just routine household tasks. But at night, Edward would surely do something, especially after the meeting with the lawyer. Carla was vigilant. At 7 p.m., he arrived in a great mood. "So, did everything go well with the lawyer?" he asked, kissing her on the cheek. "Everything's resolved. Mr. Mendez said that if something happens to me, you won't have any problems accessing the assets." "Excellent," Edward said, satisfied. "And the doctor?" "Tomorrow morning. I booked it for 9 a.m. During dinner, Carla noticed that Edward insisted she eat more of the salad he had prepared himself. She pretended to eat a little, but discreetly discarded the rest in the trash. After dinner, she took a double dose of activated charcoal for safety. At 9:30 p.m., Edward announced, "I need to go out again. Urgent work." Carla saw him to the door with a gentle smile. As soon as he left, she ran to the computer to watch the camera recordings. And it wasn't in vain. In the kitchen recording, Edward appeared preparing the salad. He took a small packet with a white powder from his pocket, opened it carefully, and poured the contents onto the vegetables. Then he mixed everything calmly and placed it on the table. Direct proof. An attempted poisoning recorded. Carla saved the video to a flash drive and hid it in a safe place. Now all that was left was to get the samples analyzed and obtain the technical report. But then another thought arose. What if, instead of just gathering evidence and going to the police, she turned the tables? If they wanted her to die, then she would die, but only as a pretense, and when the two of them thought they had won, she would come back to destroy them. She sat down at her computer and began to sketch out the plan. They want my death, they will have it, but in the way I want. The next morning, Carla woke up with a clear mind and a well-defined plan. During the night, she had mentally organized every detail of the operation. The idea of faking her own death seemed insane, but with the right preparation, it was perfectly viable. She needed allies. She picked up her phone and called an old friend from college. "Hello, Max. It's Carla. Carla Hayes. My God, it's been so long. I've missed you. How are you?" "Not very well, to be honest. I need your help." "What happened?" She explained the situation briefly, without going into detail about the poisoning. "Max, I need to stage a convincing death, so convincing that even doctors will believe it." He was silent for a few seconds. "This is very serious, Carla. Are you sure you want to go through with this?" "I am. It's the only way to protect myself and to get justice." "All right. I know an ER doctor, Dr. Julian Serrano. Occasionally he guides us in realistic emergency scenes for the theater, and he also has a compound that can drastically reduce vital signs, making detection difficult, but it has to be done very carefully and by a professional." "Is it safe?" "Yes, if applied correctly and with monitoring, the effect lasts up to 2 hours, maximum." "That's enough time. Can you set up a meeting?" "Of course. We'll also need an excellent makeup artist to create the appearance of death. And someone inside the hospital. Without that, it won't work. I know an employee at the morgue of a public hospital here in Chicago. He works as an orderly. His name is Vince. Would he agree to participate?" "He'll agree, but he'll want money. A lot of money. It's a big risk." "How much?" $100,000. "That's not a problem if the plan works." She took down the contacts, and they arranged to meet the next day. In the afternoon, Carla went to the private lab and delivered the samples. "I need a full toxicology exam," she told the lab director, a serious-looking bald man. "Of course, the results will be ready in up to 2 business days." "Is it possible to determine exactly what was used?" "If there's poison, we'll find it. We have the technology to detect even microscopic traces." Carla thanked him and left. On the way, she stopped at a coffee shop and had a good lunch. Then she went to the pharmacy and bought more boxes of activated charcoal and some compounds to protect her liver and kidneys. If Edward continued with the poison, she would need to protect her body. The next day, Carla woke up more determined than ever. At 2 p.m., she met with Max in a small coffee shop in downtown Chicago. He arrived accompanied by 2 men, Dr. Julian Serrano and the makeup artist Arthur Gold. "Carla, let me introduce you," Max said. "Julian will take care of the medical part, and Arthur will create the necessary appearance." Julian, a thin man of about 50, listened attentively to Carla's explanation. "I understand," he said. "Technically, it's viable. There's a compound that reduces vital functions to a minimum. The pulse becomes so weak that only specific devices can detect it. but it's essential to calculate the exact dose and time. And the risk? Asked Carla. Minimal. If we do everything correctly, the effect lasts a maximum of 2 hours. Then you recover your vital signs normally, but during that period, you will be conscious, though unable to move or speak. That's sufficient, Carla breathed deeply. And the makeup artist, Arthur, a creative young man with an intense gaze, opened a tablet with reference images. I can do realistic corpse makeup, pallor, bluish lips, deep-set eyes. I also apply a special powder that makes the skin cold to the touch. In less than 20 minutes, you'll be unrecognizable. Perfect. Carla noted everything on her phone. And about the hospital, Max intervened. My acquaintance Vince works at the morgue of County General Hospital. He can receive you when the ambulance arrives, ensure you stay in a safe room until you revive, and control the release of the body. And he really agrees? Carla wanted to confirm. He agrees, but he asked for $100,000, half before, half after. Max shrugged. It's a huge risk for him. The money is not a problem, Carla said. If this works, every cent is worth it. For 2 hours, the four of them discussed all the details. Schedules, routes, disguises. Carla was supposed to die at home, preferably in front of Edward. He would call the ambulance, she would be taken to the hospital, and Vince would take care of the rest. And the documents? Asked Julian. I already have contacts who can help me deal with that, Carla replied. Death certificate, funeral, leave it to me. The main thing now is to make the performance work. That night at home, Carla reviewed the camera recordings again. Edward had been even more active than usual. He had added something to 3 different products. He was accelerating the process. At 8 p.m., he returned from work and went straight to the kitchen. Honey, I made your favorite soup, he said, serving a bowl. Eat it while it's hot. Carla tasted the soup. The flavor seemed normal, but she still pretended to eat and discreetly threw the rest away when Edward left to answer the phone. I don't have an appetite, she complained. I think the illness is getting worse. You really should go to the doctor, said Edward, feigning concern. It's getting worse and worse. Maybe I'll go tomorrow, Carla replied. After dinner, Edward prepared tea with honey again. This time, Carla left nothing in the cup. She threw it all into the pot of an artificial plant, ensuring no trace remained. At midnight, when Edward left again, probably to meet Lorena, Carla still felt well. It was a sign that her care was working. The next day, she had the meeting with Vince at the hospital itself. He was a middle-aged man with a tired expression, the characteristic smell of disinfectant impregnated in his clothes. Do you understand the risk of this? He asked after hearing the whole plan. If they find out, I not only lose my job, but I could go to jail. The $100,000 is fair compensation, Carla said firmly. Besides, total confidentiality. If something goes wrong, you will have helped bury me following all the rules. Vince took a deep, thoughtful breath before answering. All right, I accept. Half now, half later. Deal. They exchanged contacts and settled the details. Vince explained how the morgue routine worked, which times were quieter, and where Carla could be discreetly hidden after reviving. And the documents? He asked. I'll take care of them myself. I already have a plan, Carla replied. In the following days, the preparations were intense. Julian did a full medical exam to ensure Carla had no contraindications. Arthur rehearsed the makeup process. The whole procedure took no more than 15 minutes. Everything is ready, Max informed her at the final meeting. The operation is set for Thursday. Are you sure you want to do this? Carla nodded with absolute determination. Edward and Lorena will get what they deserve. At home that night, she hugged her husband for the last time, wishing him good night. Tomorrow, everything would change. Tomorrow, her resurrection and their downfall would begin. On Thursday morning, Carla woke up with the feeling that her life would be divided into a before and an after. Outside, a typical autumn day in Chicago. Cloudy sky, mild temperature, light wind, a fitting climate for a funeral. Edward was having coffee in the kitchen, reading the news on his phone. He seemed calm, even satisfied. Evidently, he believed the plan was coming to an end. "Good morning, honey," he said. "How are you?" "Very bad," Carla replied, sitting at the table. "I was nauseous all night. My head hurts terribly." "Maybe you should go to the doctor today," Edward suggested with false solicitude. "Yes, maybe, but I want to rest at home for a bit first." "All right," he finished his coffee. "I'm heading to work. If you feel anything, call me immediately." As soon as he left, Carla reviewed all the details of the plan one last time. At 2 p.m., Arthur would arrive for the makeup. At 3 p.m., Julian would bring the compound. At 4 p.m., she would take the dose. At 4:30 p.m., Edward would receive an SMS saying she was feeling very ill. Everything was timed. Time seemed to drag on. Carla organized the room, left the will in plain sight on the table. At 1 p.m., Max called. "Carla, is everything ready? Vince is at his post. Are you sure you're not going to back out?" "No, Max, I have to do this." "Then good luck and be careful." At 2 p.m., Arthur arrived with his makeup case. In the next 30 minutes, he transformed a healthy woman into a pale corpse, whitish skin, bluish lips, deep-set eyes, a cold touch. "The makeup lasts about 4 hours," he explained. "I used a special powder to give the sensation of cold skin." At 3 p.m., Julian arrived. He checked Carla's pulse and blood pressure again. "Everything is normal. The preparation takes effect 15 minutes after ingestion. The pulse drops to 5 beats per minute. Breathing becomes almost imperceptible. The body temperature drops by 2 degrees. By common methods, death will be confirmed. You will be partially conscious, but you won't be able to move or speak. The effect lasts a maximum of 2 hours. Carla nodded. "That's sufficient." She took the vial with steady hands. "Thank you for your help. After everything is over, you will receive extra payment." At 4 p.m., she took the dose and lay down on the living room sofa. Julian and Arthur left discreetly. She was alone, waiting for the compound to take effect. At first, nothing happened. Then came the dizziness. Her extremities became heavy. Her breathing slowed. Her consciousness became foggy. At 4:30 p.m., the pre-prepared SMS was automatically sent to Edward. "I'm feeling very sick. Come quickly." At 5 p.m., the effect reached its peak. Carla lay motionless, eyes closed, breathing almost imperceptibly, but hearing everything around her. At 6 p.m., the apartment door opened forcefully. Edward entered hurriedly, calling for Carla. "Carla, what happened?" He ran to the living room and stopped suddenly upon seeing his wife motionless on the sofa. He knelt beside her, shaking her shoulders. "Honey, listen to me." He placed his fingers on her neck in search of a pulse. Then he pressed his ear to her chest. Nothing. Carla, motionless, felt like crying, but controlled herself. She needed to look dead. "My God," Edward murmured, taking his phone out of his pocket. "Did it really work?" His voice trembled, but Carla could perceive a disguised tone of relief. "Yes, my wife. It seems she has died," he said on the phone. "Come quickly." "Yes, she had been sick for some time." "No, she's not conscious. I don't feel a pulse." While waiting for the ambulance, Edward paced back and forth across the living room, muttering disconnected phrases. Carla could distinguish fragments. "Call Lorena. The will. Tomorrow." In 20 minutes, the ambulance arrived. The medic, an experienced woman, examined Carla quickly. "How long has she been like this?" she asked Edward. "I don't know exactly. I just got here and found her like this," he said, faking grief. "This morning, she was complaining of feeling unwell." The medic checked her pulse, listened to her heart, shone a flashlight in her eyes. "There are no vital signs," she concluded. "Probable cardiac failure." "And now," asked Edward, "we will take her to the hospital to arrange the documents. You should come by tomorrow morning." Carla was placed on a stretcher and taken to the ambulance. During the journey, she heard the paramedics talking, but she couldn't move a muscle. The compound was still in full effect. At the hospital, they transferred her to another gurney and took her directly to the morgue. There she heard a voice she recognized immediately. "Another one," Vince said to a younger colleague. "Yeah, lately too many people are dying," the young man replied. They left Carla in a cold chamber and walked away. The silence was almost absolute, broken only by the distant sound of footsteps. Gradually, sensitivity began to return. First her fingers, then her hands, then her legs. Half an hour later, she managed to sit up. 10 minutes later, to stand. The effect of the preparation had ended at the exact time. At 8:30 p.m., Vince appeared in the chamber. "So, you're back?" he asked softly. "Yes, everything went according to plan," replied Carla, now able to speak. "Great. Now let's go to the supply room. There's a bed there. You spend the night hidden. Tomorrow, when he comes to see the body, you'll be here, lying down, still pretending to be dead. I'll let him see you for a maximum of 1 minute. Then I'll say, 'I have an urgent commission,' and I'll remove the body. I'll propose to handle the cremation myself." Vince led Carla to a small service room in the back. There was a simple bed, water, and some snacks. "Stay here quietly. Tomorrow everything continues as planned." Carla lay down, feeling a mixture of relief and anxiety. It was the first night she slept knowing she was officially dead. The next morning, Edward arrived at the morgue to handle the paperwork. Carla watched him on a hidden camera Vince had installed in the hallway. He was visibly intoxicated, whether from joy or nervousness. He could barely stand upright. "Where is my wife's body?" he asked, slurring his words. "Sorry, sir, but you are not allowed to enter intoxicated," Vince replied, feigning embarrassment. "What do you mean not allowed? I lost my wife. I needed to calm down somehow. I spent the night drinking." Edward slipped a large bill into the orderly's pocket and looked pleadingly. "We can't allow you in an alcoholic state here. The inspection committee is arriving," Vince said, maintaining the act. "But can we handle the documents? You will have to sign some things about the funeral. We can do cremation through the hospital at no additional cost." "All right, but I want to see my dear wife," Edward whined. Vince led him to the room where Carla lay, covered by a sheet. Then he went out into the hallway, leaving him alone. Carla, motionless, was breathing almost imperceptibly. Even if she breathed more heavily, Edward wouldn't notice. He was too drunk. "Here's your house. Here are your millions," Edward laughed, pulling a crumpled copy of the will from his pocket and placing it on her. "They'll serve you well in the coffin now. You annoyed me so much." Then Vince came back in and took Edward by the arm, pulling him away from Carla. Edward signed the formalities, received the death certificate, and staggered out towards the parking lot. In the car, Lorena was waiting for him at the wheel of a red convertible. "So, is it all done?" she asked impatiently. "Yes, honey. Now we can handle the inheritance and live our best life." "And the body?" "They're going to cremate it. Better this way, we don't even have to spend on a funeral." Lorena laughed. "What luck. It means the millions are practically ours." Carla watched everything on a small monitor that Vince had left in the small room. Max had also installed microphones in Edward's car, allowing her to hear their conversations. In the first week after her death, Edward played the devastated widower. He received condolences, told friends and colleagues about his wife's sudden death. He even organized a symbolic memorial with an empty coffin. Poor Carla, acquaintances sighed. She was so young. Yes, she had been sick lately, Edward would say, putting on a pained face. At night, however, he met with Lorena to plan the future. "We're going to buy a new luxury house," she'd say. "Decorate it my way, do a renovation. And I'll get a new car. I've always wanted an imported SUV," Edward would add. "And we'll travel to the Caribbean, spend the summer on the beach." Carla heard every word and planned her revenge. They want to receive the money? Let them receive it, but not as they think. A week after her death, Edward submitted documents to start the inheritance process. Mr. Mendez received him with a compassionate expression. "My condolences, Edward. Carla was a wonderful woman." "Thank you," he replied with false sadness. "It's hard to live without her." "I understand. But life goes on. Your documents are in order. In a month, you will be able to access the assets." Carla, in hiding, continued to follow every step of Edward and Lorena. They were already living almost openly together, dreaming of the money they had not yet received. Lorena spent her days in expensive stores, trying on jewelry. Edward browsed catalogues of luxury cars. "Just 2 more weeks," he'd say. "We'll be millionaires." "I can't wait," she'd reply. "I'm tired of hiding and saving." 2 weeks after her death, Carla already had the definitive evidence in her hands. The toxicology report requested from the private lab arrived with the results. Traces of thiodecarb, a highly toxic pesticide, were found at levels consistent with chronic poisoning. Carla photographed and digitized the document, saving copies in an encrypted cloud. This was the missing piece to incriminate Edward and Lorena. From her hiding place, she also monitored the bank movements. Before she died, she had transferred part of her money to an offshore account in the name of a fictitious company. Edward had no idea. He thought he was about to receive millions, but in reality, the main funds were protected. "They are waiting for the money to drop," Carla muttered, smiling to herself. "They'll be waiting a long time." Vince continued to provide logistical support. Every night he brought food, updated her on the news, and collected the recordings from the microphones installed in Edward's car. "They are getting more and more confident," Vince said. "Edward is already talking about changing cars, buying land. Lorena talks about jewelry. They think the money is theirs." "Excellent," replied Carla. "I want them to relax completely before the final blow." Meanwhile, Max was working on another front. Documents. He created a new identity for Carla. Anna Vance, an investment consultant, recently arrived from out of state. With a new ID, social security number, and a different appearance, she could move around without being recognized. Arthur helped her maintain the transformation. He dyed her hair black, gave her contact lenses, and changed her style of clothing and makeup. In a few hours, Carla ceased to be Carla. Now she was Anna Vance, an elegant and unknown woman. "Impressive," said Max, examining her. "Even I wouldn't recognize you." "Perfect," she replied. "That's exactly what I need." In the 3rd week after her death, Edward and Lorena took their first bold step. They went to the registry office to officially start the transfer of assets. Carla watched the scene on her phone. A discreet camera installed by Max in the lawyer's office captured everything. "It's just a matter of time," Lorena was saying. "Soon we'll have access to the accounts." "Yes, honey," replied Edward. "Finally free of that woman. Now it's just about enjoying life." Carla saved every video, every audio, every piece of evidence. But she didn't just want to report them. She wanted them to feel fear, to experience a piece of what they had done to her. The next day, Max gave Carla an envelope with prepaid cell phone chips. "These numbers are not registered in your name," he said. "You can use them to send anonymous messages." Carla smiled. Time to play a little. That night, Edward received the first message from an unknown number. "Do you really think you can kill and get away with it?" He frowned, looking around. He was at Lorena's apartment, drinking wine. "Who is it?" she asked, seeing him turn pale. "I don't know, it must be some prank." He deleted the message and tried to smile. Minutes later, another message. The truth always comes back, even from the grave. "Edward, what is happening?" Lorena began to get restless. "Nothing, Lorena, nothing." But his voice was trembling. At midnight, a third message. "Have you looked behind you today?" Edward jumped from the sofa and ran to the window. His heart was beating fast. There was no one outside. Carla, from her hiding place, laughed to herself. She was using his own fears against him. In the following days, the anonymous messages intensified. Messages, calls, mysterious envelopes arriving at the front desk of Lorena's apartment. Inside, just photos of Carla smiling, taken from old social media profiles. "Edward, I'm getting scared," said Lorena. "What if it's the police?" "Calm down, no one will find out," he said, but his expression was one of panic. "I took care of everything." "Did you really?" She stared at him suspiciously. "Are you sure?" Edward no longer slept well. He began to drink even more. At work, he made silly mistakes. His colleagues whispered about his haggard appearance. He seemed to be on the verge of a collapse. In the 4th week after her death, Carla took the next step. Dressed as Anna Vance, she scheduled a meeting with Edward at the company, pretending to be an investor interested in the business. He accepted immediately, anxious for fresh money to support his lifestyle with Lorena. When Carla entered the room, Edward stood up to greet her. She wore dark hair, light-colored contacts, and discreet makeup. Not a trace resembled the old Carla. "A pleasure, Anna Vance," she said, extending her hand. "A pleasure," replied Edward, trying to smile. "How can I help you?" "I am an investment consultant. I have an interest in companies like yours." She placed a folder on the table. "But before we talk about numbers, I wanted to understand your financial situation." Edward looked at her strangely. "Financial situation?" "Yes, it's important for my reports." She smiled professionally. "Your wife recently passed away, correct? My condolences." He turned pale. How do you know that?" "It's public record, isn't it?" She flipped through the folder. "And I read that the inheritance process is underway. Is that true?" Edward cleared his throat. Yes, it is, but as you said, it's public." Carla maintained a neutral smile. Inside, she felt her heart racing. She was 3 feet away from the man who tried to kill her, and he didn't recognize her. "Excellent." She closed the folder. "Let's schedule a new meeting next week. Then you can update me on the process." "Of course," replied Edward nervously. "At your disposal." Carla stood up, extended her hand again, and shook his. He noticed something in her eyes, a familiar glint, but he couldn't identify from where. She left the office, got in her car, and took a deep breath. The plan was working perfectly. The following week, Edward was visibly more haggard. Deep dark circles, unshaven, wrinkled clothes. The weight of guilt and the fear of anonymous messages were destroying him. Carla, still as Anna Vance, arrived at the company for the scheduled meeting. Edward stood up awkwardly. "Good morning," she said with a professional smile. "Everything okay?" No, I've been under a lot of stress," he replied, rubbing his face. "I can imagine." Carla sat down. "Has the inheritance process progressed?" "Yes, it's just a few more days until the judge releases everything," said Edward, trying to sound firm. Carla opened a folder and showed a supposed contract. "Excellent. I have an investment proposal, but before we proceed, I would like to conduct an internal audit of the company. It's standard procedure." Edward hesitated. "An audit?" "Nothing invasive. We just check numbers, contracts, suppliers. That way, I gain confidence before investing." He sighed. "All right. Send me a list of what you need." Carla smiled. "Great, I'll prepare everything and get back to you." As she left, she sent an audio message to Max. "He's about to fall apart. A few more days and he'll lose control." Max replied, "I received the latest recordings from his car. Want to hear them?" "Send them." Carla listened to the audio. Edward and Lorena were arguing. "Lorena," Edward's voice trembled, "I can't take these messages anymore. What if it's the police? What if someone saw what we did?" "Edward, stop talking like that. I took care of everything. No one knows. She's dead." "Lorena, are you sure? Because sometimes I feel like she's here." Carla smiled. It was working. That night, Edward received another message from the unknown number. "Hell has a scheduled appointment." And a few minutes later, another. "You know you killed me. I know you killed me. I'm coming back." Edward dropped his phone on the floor. He was sweating cold. Lorena, I need a drink. I can't take it anymore. He poured himself a whiskey. I think I'm going crazy. You're not crazy, she said, more nervous than ever. It's your conscience, Edward. Shut up, he shouted, slamming the glass on the table. Everything will be fine. The money will come. Then we'll leave this country. Carla, from her hiding place, watched the video in real time. Every gesture, every word was an indirect confession. 2 days later, Edward received a mysterious envelope at the office. Inside, a single sheet of paper. Nothing that is done remains hidden forever. And a flash drive. When he inserted it into his computer, a video began to play. It was the recording of him pouring the white powder on Carla's salad. Edward turned pale, looked around, locked the door, and played the video again. It was clear, undeniable. No, this can't be happening, he murmured. He tried to call Lorena, but she didn't answer. Carla knew. She was very close to the right moment. That night, she looked at herself in the mirror. Dark hair, light contacts, discreet makeup. I am Anna Vance, but not for much longer, she thought. She called Max. Is everything ready for the final phase? Everything. The police have already been informed. When you give the signal, they will move in. Perfect. Tomorrow we'll end this. The next morning, Carla scheduled another meeting with Edward. He arrived before the appointed time, sweating, with red eyes. Anna, please tell me who you really are, he asked suddenly before sitting down. Why are you doing this? Carla maintained her composure. I am just an investor. But she tilted her head, looking him in the eyes. You know, sometimes I think people hide things. Edward swallowed hard. What kind of things? Crimes, for example. She closed the folder. I know more than you imagine, Edward. He was speechless, paralyzed. Tomorrow, at 10 a.m., I want you to be at your company with all the inheritance documents. She stood up. I will present you with a proposal that could change your life. Okay, he said, his voice almost a whisper. Carla left, leaving him with trembling hands. In the car, she called Max. Tomorrow at 10. Prepare everything. Max replied, You can count on it. It will be a spectacle. That night, Edward drank until he passed out on the sofa. Lorena tried to calm him. What happened? You're acting strange. Tomorrow everything will change, he said, taking another swig. But I'm afraid, Lorena. Very afraid. She held his hand. Everything will be fine. It's just paranoia. But inside, Lorena was also scared. The mysterious messages, the videos, Edward's nervousness. She was beginning to think that, in fact, Carla might not be dead. The next day, at 10 a.m., Edward entered the company with the inheritance folder. In the meeting room, Carla was waiting for him, still as Anna Beatrice. Max and 2 men in suits were present, pretending to be financial assistants. Edward sat down, sweating coldly. Here are the documents, he said, placing the folder on the table. I want to get this over with. Carla looked at him, took a deep breath. The moment had arrived. Edward, she said, taking off the fake prescription glasses and the contact lenses. Look at me. Really, look at me. He raised his eyes. The blood drained from his face. No, it can't be. It can, said Carla, removing the wig and letting her natural hair show. It's me, Edward. Carla. The silence in the room was absolute for a few seconds. Edward remained paralyzed, his face white as paper, his mouth half open, unable to make a sound. Max and the assistants watched in silence. One of them was discreetly recording everything with a micro camera built into his briefcase. Carla maintained a firm posture. Are you surprised, Edward? You shouldn't be. I was always stronger than you thought. You died, he stammered, getting up abruptly. I saw the body. You saw what you wanted to see, she replied, crossing her arms. A performance, a plan, a mirror of your own trap. He staggered to the wall, leaning on it. This is impossible. You can't. Carla opened the folder and took out several sheets. Here is the toxicology report proving the poison in the food. Here is the recording of you tampering with my salad. Here is the audio of your conversations with Lorena. And here, she pointed to a flash drive, is the video of your farewell at the morgue. Edward fell to his knees. You set this all up? The whole time? No, Edward, you set it up. I just survived, and now your time has come. At that moment, the door to the room opened. 2 detectives and a sergeant from the Chicago Police Department entered with a warrant in hand. Edward Hayes, the sergeant asked with a firm voice, you are under arrest for attempted murder, conspiracy to commit murder, document fraud, and criminal association. No, wait, this is a mistake, he shouted, trying to get up. The officers immediately handcuffed him. You will pay for this, Carla, he spat as he was being taken away. You damn witch. Carla approached, crouched down near him, and said softly, this was for every night you made me think I was dying. For every lie, for every spoonful of poison. It's not over, he growled. I can still... Is it, Edward? Is it over? At the building's exit, Lorena was waiting in the car, excited, thinking the day would end with champagne. She was surprised to see Edward being led away in handcuffs by 2 police officers. What? What's happening? She shouted, getting out of the car in shock. The sergeant approached. Lorena Vega, you are also under arrest. We have proof of your active participation in the crime of attempted murder and asset fraud. No, that's absurd. I didn't do anything, she sputtered. But Carla appeared behind the sergeant, revealing her true identity in front of Lorena. You didn't do anything, Lorena, said Carla calmly. Then why do I have 12 hours of audio recordings of you conspiring against me? Lorena was speechless. The color fled from her face. This can't be. You died. Almost, replied Carla, but not enough to leave you 2 free. Both were taken away in separate squad cars. In the days that followed, the case was news in the major newspapers. Woman fakes her own death to expose. Husband and lover in poisoning plot. Victim survives murder attempt and devises cinematic plan to capture criminals. The story went national. Carla, although hounded by the media, decided to maintain a low profile. The district attorney's office had already gathered enough evidence to ensure long sentences for Edward and Lorena. The recordings, reports, and testimonies formed an unbeatable case. Carla, finally, could start living again. She legally reversed her death, reclaimed her identity with legal and psychological support. The house was renovated, all internal cameras removed. The preserved inheritance was finally used for something worthy, helping women victims of violence and manipulation. She founded an NGO called Reborn, aimed at sheltering women who, like her, had almost lost their lives at the hands of those who claimed to love them. Max, Arthur, Julian, and Vince received their financial compensation and, more importantly, became true friends. One night, Carla wrote in her diary, "Revenge didn't bring me peace, but the truth set me free. I died once, yes, but I was reborn much stronger." The legal proceedings moved forward with surprising speed, thanks to the volume and clarity of the evidence. The DA's office accepted the complaint, and the responsible judge ordered immediate pre-trial detention for Edward and Lorena. The trial was set for 3 months later. Meanwhile, Carla preferred to stay out of the spotlight. She was recovering physically and emotionally from the experience, the slow poisoning, the escape plan, the staging of her own death. It all still felt like a bad dream. Surviving was only the first part, she told Max during a quiet lunch. Now I need to understand who I am after all of this. Max just nodded, respecting the silence that followed. Carla spent her days reorganizing her life. She legally reversed her death and reclaimed her original identity. She closed the fake accounts, updated her records, and recovered her assets. She reviewed all the paperwork, closing bureaucratic processes, cancelling authorizations Edward had tried to approve and correcting records. At first, she felt exhausted by so many procedures. But little by little, she regained control with patience and firmness. Meanwhile, Edward tried to plead insanity. My client suffered an emotional collapse and was not in a condition to evaluate his actions, his defense attorney claimed. The prosecution reacted firmly. We have recordings, reports, videos. Nothing was done on impulse. The crime was premeditated. Everything was carefully calculated. Lorena, for her part, tried to distance herself from responsibility. I didn't know he was really going to do something to her, she declared to the police. He was just talking. But the audio recordings said otherwise. In one of them, she said, laughing, "Better a widow than a divorcee, right, love?" The prosecutor demanded an exemplary sentence, and when the preliminary sentence came out, Carla received a copy handed to her by Max. Defendants Edward Hayes and Lorena Vega, convicted of attempted murder, document fraud, and criminal conspiracy. Sentence: 28 years of imprisonment. She read the document calmly, then folded it and put it in a folder. She didn't celebrate, didn't smile, didn't shout. She just murmured to herself, "Now, it's done." In the days that followed, Carla decided to do something she had been postponing for a long time: travel alone. Nothing too elaborate, just enough to get out of Chicago and breathe. She chose a town in rural Vermont where no one knew her. She rented a small house for a season, brought some books, and turned off her phone. She would wake up early, take short walks, have coffee with a pastry on the porch, and write in a simple notebook. She didn't think about revenge or justice or everything she had lived through. She just felt the wind on her face. There, alone with her own thoughts, she understood something important. She didn't want to go back to her old life. She wanted to start a new one, with lightness, with truth, with freedom. One afternoon, sitting under a tree, she opened the notebook and wrote, "They wanted me dead, but I survived, and not by luck, by choice, by courage." Then she closed the notebook, took a deep breath, and watched the sunset over the mountains. She was alive, and for the first time in a very long time, at peace. If you enjoyed this story of justice and rebirth, make sure to like, comment, and subscribe to Velvet Vendetta.